it would not surprise me if he is Max Verstappen's teammate in 2026 at the Red Bull race.
What are the biggest surprises of the Formula One season so far? Hello and welcome to a brand new video from the team at Racing News 365, picking our biggest positive and negative surprises of the season so far. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I cannot do this video alone. Joining me to discuss our biggest positive and negative surprises of the season is, of course, 2023 Young Journalist of the Year, Sam. Absolutely, yes, we're still doing the piece, Coop, and the main man himself, lead editor Ian Parks. Gentlemen, very simple video. All we've got to do is talk about our individual biggest positive and negative surprise of the season so far. Let's get the negatives out of the way with first, I feel, so we can end on a positive. And Sam, you can go first. What has been your biggest negative surprise of the season so far?
Okay, so my biggest negative surprise so far, I'm going with the team. And this is, to be fair, based on data looking at kind of year-on-year growth. Aston Martin are the only team, when you look at the race traces and often the qualifying traces as well, that have negatively grown. So their lap time has gotten worse over the last year, whereas everyone else on the grid have improved. Some people have improved more or less, and that's obviously what accounts for the changes in the pecking order. Ferrari, for example, yes, they've improved over a lap, but not as much as some of their competitors, so on and so forth. But Aston Martin have often ended up slower than they were 12 months ago. So that for me is a disappointment, but also I wasn't expecting them to slip back. That is the surprise, is that I thought they would kind of hold steady where they were, but it looks like they've kind of fallen behind a couple of their kind of midfield rivals, which they were looking like in danger of doing. But I think it's probably an element of all eyes are on 2026 in many ways for them. Lance Stroll has scored all of their points. Fernando Alonso's been disappointing so far. Lance has had a couple of really good, really strong races to his credit. But what interestingly he said in Saudi Arabia was that his Q1 effort this year was slower than his Q1 effort last year, which again is further evidence to my overarching point.
I'm actually going to stick with you in terms of going for a team as the biggest negative, because for me it's Red Bull and its decision to replace Liam Lawson with Yuki Tsunoda after just 2 races. I just thought that whole storyline was remarkable for all the wrong reasons, to give Liam and what was his first full-time F1 seat. I don't know if you can call it full-time, the fact he lasted 2 races with Red Bull before being kicked back to Racing Bulls. But I just think the fact he was given 2 races at 2 circuits, he'd never raced that before. And, then replaced by Yuki, who's doing an okay job, not really setting the world on fire. At the same time, he's not doing awful, just kind of thereabouts, picking up a couple of points, still finding his feet there. Liam never really got the chance to find his feet. He had one of the most remarkable Australian Grand Prix in terms of the weather, and it was so difficult for all the full-time rookies. And then, of course, China, where it was a sprint race, and obviously, so you lose the majority of your practice time. I just think he wasn't given a fair chance. The big question now is, will he ever get another chance at Red Bull? If history proves itself, typically when a driver gets demoted, they don't then get promoted again. And it leaves the question, Liam is also, it seems, struggling a little bit at Racing Bulls. Where does he go for next season? Do Red Bull keep him in the family? Is he going to improve to become a consistent points finisher? But for me, I would have really liked to have seen Liam being given a proper fair chance, at least the recent triple header, where some venues he's raced at before, to show what he can do. So for me, that was, Liam being axed after 2 races is my biggest disappointment of the year so far, the biggest negative surprise. Ian, what about for you?
Yeah, that was just to extend that discussion point, because that's what it's all about. I do agree. I thought it was wholly unfair of Red Bull to axe Liam after 2. Just give him that triple header, at least allow him to build up a degree of confidence, in particular going to a couple of circuits that he'd already known or already knew quite well. Japan being the obvious one, bearing in mind he'd previously raced there in F1, of course, and of course his Super Formula season where he'd raced there twice. So yeah, that was a major surprise and a big disappointment for me. the biggest disappointment. It's quite strange, isn't it? How we're all going to go for a team. So Sam's gone for Aston Martin, you've gone for Red Bull. My biggest disappointment overall is Ferrari. Now, I know this is something that we discussed on the podcast the other day, and I went into a little bit of detail. But for me, Ferrari were that team that I felt was really going to make that big breakthrough for this season. We know that they finished just 14 points shy of McLaren in the Constructors' Championship at the end of last year. They'd scored a really good run of results. You remember Charles Leclerc won in Italy. Ferrari scored a 1-2 led by Charles in the United States. They had a 1-3 in Mexico City on that occasion led by Carlos. And okay, they didn't win another Grand Prix of the last 4 after that, but nevertheless, they were consistently there or thereabouts. I think Carlos had a podium in Vegas. I think Charles would finish second in Qatar. And then I remember it was a 2-3 in Abu Dhabi, but led by Carlos on that occasion ahead of Charles. So it was a really good run of results. And I was fully anticipating them to come flying into this season, building onto that positivity, that momentum. That, of course, got Lewis Hamilton joining them. There was huge positivity around that. When you think of everything that went on about Lewis's signing in the middle of January. And okay, Australia was a bit of a lame duck for them. It was like, where have you gone, Ferrari? Because in preseason testing, they were looking quite strong as well. And I think not just us on this panel, but many other pundits were fully expecting them to be the challenging team to McLaren. And then we got to China. As I say, Lewis won from the sprint pole. Sorry, he won the sprint from pole. And we thought that was going to be liftoff point. And it's just not happened. Charles has produced some good performances. Finally getting that first podium in the last race in Saudi Arabia, that will at least be something for the team to build on, a degree of positivity. But everything around Lewis at the minute, it's just fallen completely flat. We know the issues he's having with the car. We've discussed that in depth. He's having to produce engine braking within this car that he's never had to do at Mercedes. We know he's got considerable balance issues that he's trying to get that right. And it's just really not followed through from last season. And Ferrari are almost third, fourth team against McLaren right now, when many people expecting them, not just me, as again reiterate that, many people expecting them to be the team to challenge McLaren this year. So yeah, for me, Ferrari has been the biggest disappointment, but I get your point, Nick, in particular around Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
And I also get Sam's point as well around Aston Martin, because they've just not delivered the goods for some time now, given all their resource as well. You've got to hope that Aston Martin for 2026, bearing in mind they'll have a full capability, that wind tunnel going forward in producing that car. They've got Adrian Newey full-time developing that car. He's not even barely batting an eye from what we've been told over the 2025 car, this year's car. So for them, if we're at this point next year in 12 months' time and Aston Martin is still not delivering, I don't know where that team will go. I really don't. But all of us, I think, have made really good points as to our biggest disappointment for over the 5 races so far. That's for sure.
Okay, let's go on to some positives. And of course, to those who are watching this video, please do let us know what is your biggest negative and positive surprise of the season so far in the comment section below. It is always amazing to get the thoughts of the fans, so please do get involved in the comment section. Sam, would you like to kickstart then? What is your biggest positive surprise of the season so far?
I think in terms of positive surprises, you can make a case for a few of the rookies. They've, some of them have made pretty hot starts to their time in F1. The one I want to single out, though, the driver that I think is kind of, I guess, worthy of some extra praise, I think it's because of the adversity the early adversity they overcame, is Isaac Hadjar.
Oh, that was mine.
Mine.
No.
Okay, all right, keep going. Oh, no.
Oh,
There you go.
no.
This is why you
This is why I said
before you
everyone.
record.
Yeah. What happens if both of your backups are the same person? That's where we're really screwed. Or we could just have a really lovely chat about Isaac Hadjar.
For the next 10 minutes.
I'll start thinking.
For
no,
me,
it's fine. We can move on.
I think it's the disparity between just how brutal that Melbourne incident was and his obvious reaction to it. And I think everyone felt for him, or everyone aside from Melbourne Marco felt for him in that moment. And it was heart-wrenching to see how painful it was for him. But the way that he has responded, it is, and I mentioned this before, but I wrote a piece about how actually that moment really made him in some ways, because it's like, this is the worst it could get. I didn't even start the race. And sometimes you just need that. You need to get that out of your system and just go, right, I've just got to move on from here. The only way is up. And he's just taken it on. He's been, going into the year, and this is why it's a surprise. I think I always said he was quick over one lap, but his radio conduct has been questioned in the past. Fair enough, rightly so. And also, he can have these moments of, I think madness is the wrong word. These moments where he just, the moments of these just mistakes where the pressure kind of really ramps up and it's at an apex, and he just can't keep it together when everything is on the line. We've seen that a couple of times in championships he's been in, and he's just been so composed and delivered when he needed to. He's been excellent over team radio. The team have said his communication's been really strong. He's also been absolutely hilarious. The Japan seatbelt incident. I think it was in Saudi as well, when he was like, we need to change the water bottle. I think in Bahrain he had some problems as well. There's always something that he's having to overcome every weekend, which is really I think it really enamors him to the audience and the fans in F1. So I think, and then aside from the fact that he's just been stellar in qualifying, he's delivered points on, I think it's a couple of occasions now. And so, I think he's been a real standout performer, and to do that in the pressure cooker that is the Red Bull family as well really says something. And I think it's maybe been enhanced slightly as well by the Liam Lawson situation. And just to touch on that very quickly, I think with Liam, I think he struggled when he's come back to Racing Bulls, but I think that's almost causation. I think the way that it was handled, he was never going to come back and just instantly flourish. So I think that all kind of together as a sum has made Isaac's year not only look fantastic, but just be fantastic.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And excuse me, the reason I was also going to put him in that category is my biggest positive. I've thought of another, but very, very quickly, that what happened to Isaac in Melbourne could have broken him. That could have literally have put an end to his F1 career had he then gone into China and struggled again, where actually he bounced back instantly as a rookie in that Red Bull family environment. That's pretty rare, which gives me the feeling that there's something inside him which is going to make Red Bull think, actually, we might need this boy in our team in the future alongside Max, or whoever obviously is also in that team should Max decide to go elsewhere. For me, though, my biggest surprise of the season is that McLaren are beatable. We came into this year, I think a lot of people with the belief of, George Russell in particular points out that McLaren could replicate what Red Bull did in 2023, and win all but one race. That quite clearly is not going to be the case. McLaren are especially beatable in qualifying. We've come to see, of course, Max has already claimed 2 poles this season, obviously in Saudi Arabia and Japan. Over one lap, the McLaren can be beaten, and we've seen as well that in the races, it is possible, it's to keep close to them. We've seen Max, of course, do it in Japan. We saw Max do it with Oscar in Saudi Arabia, albeit behind. So I think there is definitely hope that we're going to have, at some point, a really, really good battle for a win when overtaking is possible at a better circuit, perhaps. So for me, that's my biggest positive surprise, is that whilst McLaren are at the top of the pecking order, they are not as superior as perhaps a lot of people feared going into this season. Ian, bring us home.
So obviously, Sam's discussed Isaac very, very
I'm
well,
so sorry.
eulogized about him superbly.
yeah. Fair.
So can't really go too much further, because the only thing I will likely add is that if Isaac continues on the trajectory that he's shown so far over these first 5 Grand Prix, and in particular, as was very well pointed out, after what happened in Australia, he could easily have crumbled, bearing in mind he's in the Red Bull family, but he hasn't. He's stepped out of that adversity and proved himself admirably well. It would not surprise me if he is Max Verstappen's teammate in 2026 at Red Bull Racing.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me in the slightest. Some pointed out at the very start of his positive surprise, you could make a case for many of the rookies, and obviously he eventually went for Isaac. Kimi Antonelli has so far delivered superbly for Mercedes. He's at a good, nurturing family there. He's got George Russell and Valtteri Bottas to guide him, so that's standing him in good stead. Ollie Behrman, again, another rookie we saw glimpses of Ollie last year. He had 3 Grand Prix in very different circumstances, performed admirably in all 3 of them. And then he's coming to Haas this year, and he has delivered well, scored points in 3 consecutive Grand Prix from China onwards, if I remember right. 8th in China, 10th in Japan, and 10th in Bahrain. So looked composed. I still think there's a lot more to come from him. I guess the positive surprise, and again, it's drawing on the McLaren, but a little bit polar opposite to what you've just suggested with regard to yours, Nick. I think it's the fact that how Oscar Piastri has really come to the fore. Yeah, we saw last season glimpses of Oscar, but nevertheless, he was being defeated in qualifying, not comfortably by Lando, but nevertheless, the qualifying aggregate was 20-4 at the end of the season. And Oscar knew going into the winter that if he was going to be a world title contender this year, that was his weakness. That was the one area that he would have to put right for this season if he and Lando were to be the 2 main title protagonists. And at this stage, after 5 Grand Prix, that's looking like it could be the case. So for me, I'm positively surprised to see Oscar develop in the way he has over the winter and put his words into actions when it comes to qualifying, because we've had 6 qualifying sessions at the moment, and it's been 4-2 in his favour. So he's already the 20-4 was over the Grand Prix last year. The 4-2 includes the 1 sprint that we've had. So that's where I'm drawing those numbers from. So yes, I think Oscar Piastri has proven himself over these 5 Grand Prix right now that he has absolutely got what it takes to potentially be the world champion that Zak Brown said he could be when he signed him from Alpine for McLaren.
Awesome stuff, the pair of you. And of course, for those watching this video, let us know your thoughts in the comments on our biggest positive and negative surprises. And as I mentioned, please do let us know your biggest surprises of the season so far in the comment section. If you can also smash that like button,